It is 2:47 in the morning. Everyone else on the planet seems to be sleeping, but not you. Your brain is running a full board meeting without your permission, replaying a conversation from 3 years ago, simulating 17 different versions of tomorrow, and somehow managing to also question the meaning of your entire existence, all at the same time. Sound familiar? And if you have felt this, you already know what happens next. Someone in your life, a parent, a friend, a therapist, maybe even a random stranger, looks at you and says those 4 words that every overthinker dreads more than anything else. You think too much. As if the solution was that simple, as if your brain had a volume knob and you just forgot to turn it down. But here's the thing nobody ever actually explains. How? How do you just stop a brain that has been operating this way since you were a child? How do you switch off an engine that has never learned the concept of idle? And more importantly, what if the advice to stop is completely, fundamentally, scientifically wrong? What if everything you had been told about your overthinking brain is missing the single most important piece of the puzzle? What if I told you that the world's most respected neuroscientists have found something extraordinary inside the brains of overthinkers? Not a malfunction, not a disorder, not a problem to be fixed, but a rare and powerful cognitive architecture that the vast majority of people on this planet simply do not have. What if your brain isn't broken? What if it's operating on a level most people never reach? Stay with me through this video, because in the next few minutes, I am going to show you the actual neuroscience behind your brain, reveal why you experience overthinking as pain when it's actually power, and give you a precise 3-step method that will completely change how you use your mind, starting today. This is the real psychology of the overthinker, and it is not what you have been told. Before we get to the science, let's talk about why everyone has been getting this so wrong for so long. Open any best-selling self-help book about mental health, type overthinking into any search engine, walk into any therapist's office, and you will find the same diagnosis waiting for you. Overthinking equals anxiety. Anxiety equals disorder. Disorder equals something that needs to be treated, managed, suppressed, or silenced. Now, I want to be honest with you here, because this isn't a video that's going to pretend your experience isn't real. The exhaustion is real. Lying awake at night with a brain that simply refuses to stop, that is genuinely painful. The social isolation of feeling like nobody else's mind works quite like yours does, that loneliness is real. The frustration of putting enormous mental energy into everything and still feeling like you are spinning in place, that is real and valid, and I see you. But here is the question that neuroscience has been quietly asking and finally answering while the self-help industry was busy selling you breathing exercises. The question isn't, how do we stop this? The question is, why does this brain do this at all? What is it actually trying to do? Because brains, real biological brains, do not develop patterns for no reason. Every single pattern in the human brain exists because at some point in evolution or development, it served a purpose. So neuroscientists did something radical. Instead of trying to fix overthinkers, they put them in fMRI brain scanners and just watched. They observed what was happening inside those brains with a level of detail that wasn't possible even 20 years ago. And what they found in those scans didn't look like a broken brain at all. What they found looked like something far more interesting, far more rare, and honestly, far more exciting. To understand what the scientists found, you need to know about 2 networks inside your brain. Think of them as 2 different operating systems running on the same hardware. They each have a job, they each have a personality, and in most human brains, they are designed to take turns. The first network is called the default mode network, or the DMN. This is your brain's wandering mind, the dreamer, the storyteller, the part that activates whenever you stop focusing on the outside world and start looking inward. The default mode network is active when you are daydreaming, when you are imagining future scenarios, when you are replaying memories, and when you are trying to understand other people's feelings and perspectives. It is the network of creativity, empathy, self-reflection, and big-picture thinking. It is also, and this is crucial, the network that activates powerfully and almost constantly in overthinkers. Your DMN doesn't just turn on when you are resting, it runs in the background of nearly everything you do. The executive control network is the opposite. It is your focused, analytical, task-oriented brain. This is the network that activates when you are solving a specific problem, making a decision under pressure, organizing information, or executing a plan. Think of it as your brain's project manager. Highly capable, highly efficient, but it needs a clear job description before it will move. These two networks, the dreamer and the executor, are the two core systems your brain switches between all day long. Here's how these two networks work in the average human brain. They are rivals. When the executive control network is fully engaged, when you are focused, working on a task, solving a problem, the default mode network is supposed to go quiet, to step back and let focus take over. And when you relax, when you stop focusing and let your mind wander, the executive network quiets down and the default mode network takes over. One on, one off, back and forth, like a light switch. But here is what happens in the overthinker's brain. And this is the moment the scientists in those fMRI studies sat up straight in their chairs. In highly creative people, in deep thinkers, in people who score high on what psychologists call openness to experience, and yes, in overthinkers, these two networks do not behave like rivals at all. They collaborate, they run simultaneously, they switch back and forth so rapidly and fluidly that they almost appear to be operating as a single unified system. This is not normal. This is remarkable. Researchers from King's College London studied this phenomenon directly, looking at the relationship between what they called neuroticism, which is the psychological trait most closely linked to overthinking, and creative output. What they found demolished the simple narrative that overthinking is purely a negative trait. People who scored higher in overthinking-related traits consistently generated more original ideas, made more unexpected conceptual connections, and demonstrated higher creativity scores across multiple different types of creative tasks. The fMRI studies revealed something even more specific and astonishing. When they looked at the brain activity of highly creative individuals and compared it to the brain scans of overthinkers, they found the same unusual pattern. Both groups were forming neural connections between brain regions that are typically treated as completely separate territories. The visual cortex talking to the emotional center, language processing linked to spatial reasoning, distant regions of the brain forming bridges that most brains simply never build. Let me be direct with you. Your brain is not running a broken version of the human operating system. Your brain is running a more complex, more demanding, more powerful version of it. The problem, and we will get to this in just a moment, is not the complexity of the system. The problem is that nobody handed you the instruction manual for it. Nobody taught you how to operate hardware this sophisticated. And so the most powerful engine in the room has been sitting in the wrong gear for years. So if the brain itself is extraordinary, and the science says it is, then why does it feel like a curse? Why does it produce anxiety, exhaustion, and paralysis instead of creativity, flow, and breakthroughs? Here is the answer, and it is beautifully simple once you see it. The problem is never the thinking. The problem is always the direction. An overthinker with no direction is like a raging river with no banks. All that incredible force and energy going everywhere at once, which is effectively the same as going nowhere at all. Here is the framework that changes everything, and it starts with understanding that there are exactly two types of overthinking, and they could not be more different in outcome. The first type is what I call undirected overthinking. This is the loop, the spiral that goes downward. Your brain is running at full power, but it has no target, so it feeds on itself. It replays old pain, simulates new fears, catastrophizes the future,
and revisits the same unresolvable questions over and over until you are exhausted from the effort of thinking thoughts that go nowhere. You know this feeling intimately. It is obsessing over a text message for 45 minutes because the other person used a period instead of a question mark. It is rehearsing an argument in your head with someone who will never know you had it. It is lying awake at 3 a.m., reliving a moment from 6 years ago that you still cannot quite forgive yourself for. It is running the same mental simulation 100 times, knowing full well it will not change the outcome and running it 101st time anyway. That is undirected overthinking. Enormous power. Zero forward movement. The second type is directed overthinking, and this is where history was made. Charles Darwin spent 20 years obsessively revisiting and questioning the same theory of evolution, refusing to let go of the idea until every angle had been examined, every objection answered, every counterargument addressed. Nikola Tesla ran complete, fully detailed engineering experiments inside his mind, visualizing every component, every stress point, every possible failure, before building anything physically. Albert Einstein imagined himself riding on a beam of light, and that single sustained thought experiment became the foundation of the theory of relativity. These people did not have quieter minds than you. They did not have fewer thoughts, less anxiety, or more natural stillness. Every account of Darwin's personal journals shows a man tormented by his own relentless thinking. Tesla had documented rituals and obsessions that would fill a modern psychiatrist's notebook. Einstein struggled with profound social isolation, driven by how differently his mind processed the world. The difference was not that their minds were calmer. The difference was that they had learned, through trial, failure, and necessity, how to give their mind a specific problem to obsess over. Direction. That's it. Do not evaluate it. Do not judge it. Do not edit it. Do not decide right now what is useful and what is not. Just get it out of your head and onto paper or a screen. Your brain has a well-documented tendency to keep looping on thoughts that it is afraid of losing. It keeps replaying them because it thinks that if it stops, they will disappear. When you write something down, you are telling your brain this thought is safe now. You can let go. And when the brain lets go of the loop, it drops into a deeper, clearer, more productive layer of thinking. What happens when you use the redirect consistently, not perfectly, but consistently, is something that overthinkers rarely get told is possible. The relationship between you and your own mind changes. The thing that used to feel like a storm you were trapped inside starts to feel like a tool you are holding. The thoughts do not get quieter, but they start to move in a direction. The intensity does not decrease, but the intensity becomes productive. You will not fix this overnight. You will not fix it in a week. But 6 months from now, you will look back and realize that the most powerful cognitive tool you have ever had was running inside you all along. You just learned how to aim it. Ordinary mind.